And today we're going to talk about bored, not boredom, boards, like getting on one. And the reason why I brought in the big guns this morning, AKA Debra Boggs, is because she is near and dear to this topic. And when I started scratching my head thinking, why are people obsessed, running like a mad dash to get on these boards, I knew that I had to get some clarification for myself, and also wanted her to be able to share her incredible depth of knowledge. If you don't know Debra Boggs, make sure that you follow her, because she has been like shouted out in all kinds of publications, including Wall Street Journal and Fast Company and Forbes. And she is not only smart, but what she has to say is so clear and practical that this is the session for you. Of course, you'll have, if you want to listen to the replay, it'll be there. And spoiler alert, she is coming on my podcast for next week. So with that in mind, thank you so much for joining, and thanks for talking coffee with me before we jumped on. And feel free to, do a quick intro for yourself too.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic because in my firm, we help VP to board level leaders go through and prepare for their high level search. And a lot of that is board searches. And we work with a lot of people who start with like, where do you start? What do you do when you're looking for a board? Who's a strong board candidate? And so that's a lot of the work that I do. And I'm really, really excited to talk about it.
Yes. And for those just joining, make sure that you let us know where you're joining from. That's the easy thing, but also what your questions are regarding how to get on one. But the first question is, okay, so what's the big whoop? Why do people want to be on boards? And I'm going to also have you go even deeper, because I think the known or the perception is, if I get on a board, I'm going to have that badge value, and people value my opinion. So part of this is the prestige, the social, the credibility, the acknowledgement. But after that, okay, that's good. And you get to tell your friends and, add it to your LinkedIn and all that good stuff. But why else? Why else do people really want to be on boards?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And like you said, it's becoming more and more popular right now as far as board work goes. And I think there's a couple of reasons. Beyond the prestige of having a board role, I think that there's a big push, especially, after the pandemic, when people are thinking about retirement, and especially executives, people that have really built strong careers. They're well known in their industry. And as you think about retirement, that's really scary. And so a lot of times people think about board work as a soft landing out into retirement, where they can still have a purpose. They still have a reason to get up, a reason to collaborate with other people, use their knowledge and everything they've gained throughout their career, but not necessarily as full-time or as intense as they had in their full-time executive career. So that's what I hear a lot of from people.
Yeah. So it's like the Goldilocks thing. I'm not overworking and being in there, but I'm still in the game and, can participate and have, a reason for being and liaise outside of my personal life.
Yeah. Staying industry, staying relevant in the industry, staying sharp, feeling like you're giving back, having a purpose. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Because, one of the things that you have helped me to understand is that not all boards, saying you want to be on a board is like saying I want to buy a car, right? There's so many different varieties, and, some are hybrid and some are not, and some are this and some are that. What are the key buckets of board opportunities, and how and why are they different? And how and why does this matter when you are thinking about moving in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. When people say, exactly, I want to get on a board, well, there's a lot of different ways that you could attack that. And there's different levels of complexity in each opportunity. And so not talking about nonprofit boards, because I think we all understand what that looks like when you're on a board for a local organization, things like that. We get what that looks like. But then when you think about for-profit companies and the opportunities to serve, there are two different buckets. There's the traditional board of directors for a public or private company. And the way you want to think about this is a lot more clearly defined. You have a specific role. You have fiduciary responsibility in the company. So you've got some skin in the game. You're going to need some sort of board insurance because you do have that fiduciary responsibility. And you're really advising the entire C-suite on strategy and direction for the company. So
when you say fiduciary responsibilities, can you crack that open a little bit more? What does that mean when you say, what does that entail? Like I'm putting money in, or I'm responsible for revenue. I'm responsible for profits. What does that fiduciary responsibility entail? What's the umbrella that it lives? What are the components underneath it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, it depends on the committee you're on, but overall, it means you're responsible for the financial health of the company and the financial decisions they're making moving forward. Are they being fiscally responsible when they're working on strategy, growth, decisions on M&As and things like that? Are they making sound financial decisions, and are they operating in a way that's sustainable and profitable?
And does that mean that you have had fiduciary responsibilities?
It depends on your role on the board. So there's a lot of different opportunities for people who are joining boards, but it typically, this is a whole separate conversation. But when you're a board ready candidate, you need to have some board specific skills, and one of those skills for a lot of people is P&L experience, P&L ownership. For most board members, unless you're coming in with a really specific area of expertise, like they're looking to scale their team and they need a CHRO on the board or something like that, or you're well versed in finance and audit or something like that, you're going to need P&L ownership and experience to understand how to manage the profit and loss of the business.
Absolutely. So the reason why I asked is because there are things that you talk about that make you board ready, right? I have the Good Housekeeping seal of board readiness, or the Debra Boggs, I should say, seal of readiness. Aside from potentially having P&L experience or a very specific area of expertise, what are the other telltale signs that this person is officially board ready? Like how do you know? Because what if I'm just like, I think I'm board ready?
Right. Well, when we think about the qualifications for that other bucket of boards, the advisory board work is a little, the barrier to entry is a little lower. But when we talk about the board of directors in a for-profit organization, formally, then you typically need at least 20 years of experience. They're getting more open to a diverse range of ages, but you need to think about, you have to have a depth of experience. And so, I don't really see people getting on boards younger than 45-ish, and that's pushing it. So think about that depth of experience. And then typically it's easiest to get on a board if you've had a C-level title. So, maybe senior vice president, if you're at a large company, titles mean different things. And so if you're at a very large company at a high level, then you may be able to come on to a smaller company without having that C-level title because you have that deep experience in the industry. But you really need to have, it's harder for people without that executive C-suite title to get onto a board. The difference is, unless you have a really deep niche experience in something that a company's really focused on. So say they're looking at, building out a new market in data analytics or something, and you're an industry expert in a specific space, then that's an opportunity as well.
I love that. And thanks for that shout out, Erica. Cybersecurity and legal expertise also, like, we want you, right? Good morning, Barbara. Good morning, Shiana. Wonderful to see you. Thanks for coming. So what I also want to ask you in terms of board readiness is, what is my ramp to be ready? How long does it take? Because what we were talking about beforehand is a lot of people think, well, I want to do this and I want to be on a board within the next, couple months.
Right.
So help us and set us up for what that expectation really is, so that people can understand that this is part of a journey.
It really is part of a journey. And if you're looking for that paid board seat on a for-profit board, company, it's one of those things you do have to prepare for and think about, like a job search, but it's going to be even longer typically. And it depends on your network and how deep your network is and how much you're able to activate your network for these opportunities. But really, when I'm working with a client who's thinking about board work, we're working with someone right now who can't even sit on a board for 18 months because of his current role, but he's preparing for retirement. And so we're doing all the steps now so that he can ramp up to a board seat when he's able to take an opportunity. And so, you're going to want to think about it like a job search. You're going to want a very strong board resume, a board bio, a LinkedIn profile that positions you well for these opportunities. Those are all pieces to start with. And then from there, it could take 2 years. It's going to take a while. We have a client we worked with a couple years ago, and she's been very active in networking. She was well qualified for boards. She's been really active in board organizations and things like that. And she landed her first board a couple months ago. So it's a process to get that first one. Now, after that, it's a little easier. It's one of those things. It's like dating. Once you're taken, everyone wants you. So after you get that first board, it's different, but it can be a very long journey. And so you want to think about it in terms of, it's a time commitment. And some people want to do a board search and a job search at the same time. Sometimes they're thinking like, oh, I'll do my last C-level role and then I'll roll off into board work, but I'm open to both. But they're two different searches and they can take a long time. And on the off chance you secure a board role before your career role, I always tell people it's more important to search for your career role first, because if you take a board seat and then the perfect opportunity comes across your desk and it's in conflict to the board seat you just took, and you have to step down, then that's not a good look. And that's not helpful for your future board search. So focus on the career search and then plan for a longer search for the board search.
So yay, Tammy. I'm very interested in pursuing a board position. And I rarely say this, and you should, because you got board written all over you, and not in the bad way. So what I want to also reinforce here is a couple of clues that you dropped through this last explanation. Number one, everybody, your board seat is more than likely going to land through your network. So talk to us about, you set up that cadence. You said better to have your last, let's say, corporate role or last, job, right, and then move to your board versus the other way around. And so many of the folks that we work with, and I'm sure that you work with, and Erica works with, we really put an emphasis on ensuring quality and strategic networking. And one of the things that comes with that is being able to succinctly talk about who you are, what you do, why you do it, and what you could do for them. So help us to understand how this whole networking thing, as you are in your job search, is the perfect catalyst for that future opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Knowing your value is so incredibly important when you can succinctly tell it to the world. And that's one of those things I tell people in a job search or a board search. But let's think about boards for now. The most important part of the search is getting clear on your ideal opportunity in the beginning. Because if you're clear about the type of organization you want to serve, what industry they're in, who their customers are, then you can know what their challenges are right now in the industry, what's going on in the market for them. And then you can back into that what unique skills you bring to the table that are uniquely equipped to solve those challenges, or to address those challenges, or to advise their C-level leadership in addressing those challenges. And so you want to think about, what is that ideal opportunity? What skills do you have to help them address it? And then you can write that succinct value proposition. Because I think a lot of times when you're when you reach this level in your career, right, you're getting ready to think about being board ready. You've got more than 20 years experience in the industry. You could do a lot of different things, and you've done a lot of different things, and you may have worked in a lot of different industries, but you can't just reach out to your network and say, I'm available for all the things, because people don't know what box to put you in. They don't know what to do. People want to help, but you have to make it easy for them. And so being really clear, and I know I'm harping on this, but it's so incredibly important. And I feel like it's a piece that's missed a lot of times. Then the rest of the process is harder, is to really get clear on your value and your audience. And then from there, you can be a lot more strategic about who you're networking with, the organizations that they're at, the introductions that you want, and so on and so on.
Exactly. So one of the tells that I know that somebody's networking or not, I'll be curious to hear how you determine this, is I do when I'm talking to a prospect, or I hear people saying, well, I'm networking like crazy. I look at their followers on LinkedIn. Now, I'm not the person that wants to see, oh, you have 7,000 million followers, because then you just have a bunch of collections, not connections, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a happy medium there, and we're not just connecting all of these people for no reason. But also, conversely, if I see that you're under, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000, and you've been in the industry for 20-something years, what that says to me is, like if I'm looking at this objectively, hey, like your LinkedIn, aside from not being optimized, is also an indicator that you're not really active in your network. How does somebody who is assessing somebody's network without knowing them, let's just say, yes, we were introduced, and now I want to find out in short speak, is this person really a player? Is this person do I care about having them on my board? What ways do they torture test the network?
Oh, that's an interesting question, and I think you're right, because I think that there's a misconception, I think, a lot of times when people are thinking about networking into an opportunity, because they think that their network is going to get them that job or get them that opportunity, and or that their reputation in the industry or their reputation with their network will get the opportunity. But what's really happening is it's more than likely a second or third degree connection, a much more removed, more acquaintance type of an opportunity, or that these opportunities will come from. And because of that, you can't really lean on just your reputation in the market. And that's where your social proof of being a player in the market is going to be important. And so, do not ignore LinkedIn, even if you're 5 years out from starting your board search. Really start thinking about LinkedIn in who you're connecting with, who your connections are, who you're following, who you're, communicating with, but also how that LinkedIn profile comes across, because you want to think about it as the only opportunity you have to make a strong first impression. So you want to think about that LinkedIn profile as walking into an interview before you ever get to. What does that headshot look like? What is that background photo? What are you, what is your headline? What are all of your experience? And this doesn't necessarily seem like it's related to networking, but it is, because that's what you're putting out in the world. And if you're not serious about that piece, then people aren't going to take you as seriously as an executive or an advisor for their company.
Exactly. I mean, we've kind of seen it all. At least I know you have.
Right.
And I'll stumble across somebody who has all the credentials and all the pedigree, and that LinkedIn profile will put me to sleep. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, this isn't a comfortable thing to say, but you're a ghost, man. You're undiscoverable. And so this all feeds into, of course, your personal brand, but also your credibility as somebody that is going to make a difference on their board. Because right. I know a lot of people that just want to sit on the board and not have impact. And we hear that all the time. I want a seat at the table. I want a seat at the table. Well, if you want a seat at this table, get on this table first and right. get a seat here. And that will help to ensure that you're really worthy of a seat going forward.
I love that. Get a seat at this table first. That's absolutely true. And you have to think about a broad network too, because I was speaking to someone the other day who reached out, and they were at C-level in their large company, but they said, they built their career through their, good work and promotions and things like that, internal reputation. And they're at this point now where they could be board ready, but they have a very narrow network within their company and they haven't networked outside the company. And so they're really struggling with that piece too. And so that's one of those things where you have to think about not just your networking for yourself right now and your internal opportunities and things like that, but what does your external network look like across the industry and not just deep within?
Yes. So for those of you that are curious about what this is called, your second, third degree connections, it's based off of a premise of your weak links are your strongest ties. This is a theory that came up back in the 70s by a Stanford professor named Mark Ganzevetter. And it's part of a practice that I teach in Portfolio Rocket because it's so easy. It's so easy to keep revisiting your old network. And the gross and disgusting way that I talk about it, just so people remember it, is if you keep on doing that, you'll be drinking dirty bathwater. You'll just keep recycling those same people, and none of those new opportunities that you're talking about will be a consideration. Tammy Dokin's question: how valuable is an NACD certification?
Love this question, Tammy. Thank you so much for asking. And couple of things. As people are thinking about being board ready, if you've already sat on a board, sometimes you get them through your network that land on your lap, something like that happens, then you don't necessarily need to think about certifications. And you don't need a certification necessarily to be a qualified board candidate. So it's not one of those things that boards look for a certification to know that you're qualified. Where board certifications are helpful is if you've not had a lot of experience at, we'll say like the board adjacent level where you're communicating with the board, where you're interfacing with what's going on with the board, then it can give you the corporate governance language that you need to confidently interview for those opportunities and understand what's going on. So the NACD certification, and there's a lot of other certifications like them. All the Ivy Leagues have them. There's a lower cost option through the Private Directors Association. There's a lot of local chapters for that too. So there's a lot of different ways you can get board certifications, but it's really more about learning the corporate governance language and the network you get through the certification program. So if you're looking at a certification program, I would either focus on a deep network, or so like if you went through Harvard's, or Stanford has one for women on boards, things like that, then you get access to that alum network. Otherwise, I wouldn't look at spending a ton of money on board certification to become board qualified and board ready, because that's not necessarily the case.
Important. I love this. Back to Erica. She's talking about using that benchmark on LinkedIn to suss out whether this person may be connected to the kinds of people that could influence the board, right? Don't forget, when you get hired or you get on a board, they're not just like hiring you. They're looking at who else you are in your sphere of influence with, right? Who else comes with you? And so what Erica points out here, which is I've seen candidates who claim industry influence and we check the connections and they're questionable. Of course, there are other channels to connect with your network, yes, but often LinkedIn is a basic connection point. And if there are 0 C-suite contacts, it could give a decision maker pause. 100% on this, right?
Yes.
And again, don't just do it for optics, because that's not what we're talking about. Yes, of course, the optics help, but not without the relationship. So I find a lot of people, I'm sure you do too, you get like all these connections. You're like, I'm sorry, who are you? I don't know who you are. I don't know why I want to connect with you. And, people are very discerning, especially at this level, about who they connect with. Because again, it goes back to the strength and the value of that network. And I like the way your friend, Michelle, talked about it. Who's that 2 a.m. person that you can call and say, hey, by the way, I'm not even sorry I woke you up, but here's something I'm asking you to do. And that's different from a 6 a.m. friend or a colleague. And that's different from somebody who you don't wake up, but you walk with the dogs and you can call them at 8 a.m. So there's lots of different levels.
I love that.
People that are part of your network.
Yes.
I like this one from Elise too. Thank you for going deep and the honesty. Yes, that's why we absolutely wanted Debra to be here. So when we're about to wrap up, and of course, anybody who has additional questions, I'm glad you got your question answered, Tammy. Any additional questions, now is your time. Last call. So what we're going to do now is I want to really understand at this point. Let's say you are board ready. You've done all the things. You've worked with Debra. Your talk track's great. Your LinkedIn is great. Blah 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 blah. What happens next? I mean, they interview you. They run you through the coals. How does that? What does that process look like? Uh-oh, Debra's frozen. Don't you love a live? Oh, Debra, cliffhanger. Oh, there you are. You're back.
I'm back.
You're frozen.
Sorry, friends.
So I was asking what happens when you are officially board ready. I mean, how do you then go about the process to actually earn the seat?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. Sorry if there's a delay. I'm traveling, everyone, so my internet connection can be a little spotty sometimes. So yeah, it's so hard. It's different than a job search. There's not really credible, like, online opportunities for boards, right? You're not necessarily going to an online, place like that. There are some board, like platforms. Some are better than others. I really like the Fourth Floor. It's one that does a lot of like really meaningful networking for board candidates and startup founders. But otherwise, it's really going to be through going, thinking about your network and really building out that network. And it's not necessarily going to be, going back to your point about when people say, I've been networking like crazy and I can't seem to land it. That's the tip off to me that people are networking very transactionally and expecting something to come from every conversation. And that every conversation they have that doesn't result in a board role or a job opportunity is a failure, right? And that's not the case, because every opportunity grows your network even further. And so I tell people to think about, again, get really clear on your focus. This is a whole separate topic, but I love to look at Crunchbase data to kind of build out lists of ideal companies, of things that, types of companies you'd like to be on for boards. And then that'll help you see the C-suite leadership at those companies and start to connect with them specifically. But then also, if you want to think about the players in the industry, people that have those deep networks and having conversations, and it's not necessarily talk to me because I want to be on a board. It's tell me what's going on in the industry, what the challenges are, have those organic conversations with other humans, open doors for other humans as well. So after you have that call, follow up with an article or a thing or an introduction to someone that they might want to know or something. So it's not just so transactional of let's have this conversation. If you don't have an opportunity for me, I'm going to the next conversation, and you're not really building that relationship. Because once you start building those relationships, then people will open doors, for you and make those secondary and third generation. Somebody referred to them as third generation connections the other day. And those are where the magic happens. And so really be specific. And I know that's a long way around the barn to say it's going to be your network. The other thing is carve out time for it, especially if you're currently in your executive role. I know it's hard, right? We're all busy. Looking for a board role is hard, right? It takes a lot of time. And so carving out time for networking every week is really helpful. I like to carve out time on my calendar for virtual coffees. And then if you have a link, you can just send it to people. I don't have an agenda for those virtual coffees. I don't want anything from people. I just want to meet other humans, see what's going on in the world, see who, what's going on for them. And those result in a ton of great opportunities, just organically. And then, the other thing I was going to say about all of this process is I don't remember. I had another thought for you.
Good. I'm glad you're taking a pause because we have an important question.
Yes.
It supersedes my last question. This one is great from Maria. The concept of within your network unfortunately leaves out underrepresented candidates. As human, our bias is to stick with those we know or others we know. How to change that?
Such a great question, Maria. I'm so glad you asked it. So this can be for a lot of, I love this question. I'm going to answer this for underrepresented groups and introverts, because the idea of networking and just reaching out to a stranger and saying, I want to meet you for virtual coffee is really uncomfortable. Let me tell you what my value proposition is. Oh, hi, Julie. So what I like to say is go where those people are. So think about, when you're building time for your networking, think about, where are those people? Are they all in a certain webinar? Are they at a conference? Where can you go to widen your network outside of the people that you know, or the people in your group, or the people that are, in your demographic, to get in front of those people? And what I like to do is then you have a natural reason to reach out. So I like to go to webinars that are maybe not have anything to do with what I want to know or matters to me at all, but those are where the people that I want to know are at. And I like to join, and then I can see who all the people that are at the webinar are, and I can send them connection requests and have a really natural reason to reach out. Hey, so-and-so, I saw we were both in the XYZ session. I'd love to connect. And then when they connect, you can say, thanks so much for connecting. If you'd ever like to meet for virtual coffee, I'd love to hear what's going on for you. If you do it in a really unsalesy way, you'll be shocked. And if you make it easy for people with a link to schedule instead of like this whole back and forth scheduling a time, if you make it easy for people and you have a natural connection point, you'll be shocked at how many people actually take you up on that conversation.
Love this. So thank you. Thank you, Debra. Thank you, everyone who is here today. Thank you for all the great questions and comments. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Erica, Elise, Barbara, Tammy. Who else? Karen. I'm missing somebody. Shiana. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope that you will reach out to Debra as you are in consideration for moving in that direction. Definitely somebody I would trust implicitly with this search. And so by all means, make sure that you follow her in the meantime. And thank you. Hi, Regina. Thank you for coming. And we'll see you soon. Look also for Debra's amazing Career Blast in a Half episode coming out next week. All right. Thank you, Alma. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Hang around for 1 minute. Okay, Debra?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you all.